Welcome to the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 284, The Need for Firewalls. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by Ninja RMM, the simple-to-use remote monitoring and management solution. This is all the tools you need in one place to provide preventative maintenance for your clients. Try it free at ninjarmm.com/10off. And also by Malwarebytes TechMensch, a comprehensive partnership program for repair shops looking to boost margins and grow their business. This includes a portable tool set to help you diagnose, remediate, and secure PCs. Malwarebytes TechMensch, built for technicians by technicians. Sign up today at malwarebytes.com/techmensch. All right, let me introduce the co-hosts. We have John Dubinsky from the Maven Group. How you doing, John?
Locked and loaded. Happy to be here, Jeff.
Awesome. And we also have Mike Wise from Clockwork Networks, who was on Podnutz Daily number 490. That was a long time ago. Good to have you, Mike. How you doing?
Good to be back. Doing great, guys.
Good. All right. So, and this is your first time on this show. That's awesome. And the whole reason for doing this show is actually Mike brought up the subject, and he was talking to John, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But John was carrying on a conversation back and forth, and they started talking about clients needing firewalls and how do you actually get the client to be able to take on something that they know absolutely nothing about. Anyway, more on that later. John, I'm going to kick it off to you, and we're going to go ahead and do some tips, and you are up.
All right, everybody, smoke them if you got them. I got a pretty long list this week. So, all right, first thing, I was messing around with one of my few Office 365 customers, and I found a new tool that Microsoft just released, and I was able to get my hands on it. And basically what it is, it's a migration tool that allows you to migrate a ton of local data directly from a desktop up into the OneDrive folder instead of just the old reliable copy and paste or using one of the administrative tools that we had to use. So that was very handy of me to find, or lucky of me to find. So that is in the show notes and in the chat as well. So that was a lifesaver. Pretty much set it and forget it. Over about 3 days, everything uploaded that the customer needed, and it was flawless and carefree. All right, on a topic that we get a lot here, I ran into an article on considerations for what you should be making owning your own IT business. And really what the article does is it is a survey of what IT managers make in a business. So if you want to compare what you're pulling down as a business owner compared to what an IT manager is making in a business, see the links in the show notes. I found it pretty interesting. You know, it made me think a little bit about what I'm charging, maybe if I need to raise that or lower that. But overall, I thought it was pretty cool information. And as I type and add that into the chat, I'm stalling. Okay, next up. I always get a ton of questions from listeners about HIPAA that I usually defer them over to Dave or somebody over to help me with HIPAA. But this is a great article from Calyptics that has 5 of the top security frameworks that are used in healthcare. And literally, these are like step-by-steps and what you can do to lock down your endpoints and network to help you with HIPAA security and just overall cybersecurity. Let's see, this past week, I had a customer plug in some Sonos, which pretty much crippled their network. If you guys ever heard about Sonos Storm, it's called a network storm. Basically, you put some Sonos devices on your network and it just saturates the Wi-Fi in your network. It's pretty interesting. I won't go into details here, but if you're curious, there's a bunch of links in the show notes and in the chat now, which helped me resolve. And I ran into this article on the Sonos site just about Sonos troubleshooting, which I thought was very cool. I'm just going to stick a link in the show notes. macOS Mojave's out. If you need an installer, I got a link to how to create an installer. I needed that last week. It was a busy week last week. A lot of unique stuff. So that's in the show notes and in the chat as well. I hear a lot of guys on other podcasts complaining or griping about all the Microsoft diagnostic data that it collects in telemetry. And well, there's now a viewer. I don't know if you guys do know that, but there is a Microsoft diagnostic data viewer. You can see everything that Microsoft is collecting from your PC. That's in the show notes as well. Ran into a problem where Windows Defender was blocking the uninstaller and installer for some applications. So I did some Googling and I found the site where you can submit false positives to Microsoft for Windows Defender. That is in the show notes. Again, the nonprofit that I'm working with, we've consolidated another site. So this is a personal plug for me to get a couple dollars for them. I've got a couple more Open Mesh OM2P wireless access points. If you're interested, my email address is in the show notes. $25 for shipping or something like that. We'll work it out and you can have some Open Mesh. They're good to go. They're OM2Ps. They're pretty recent. So if you're interested in that, just pop me with an email. It's a little personal plug. And the last thing is I was on Facebook catching up on the posts in the CRP group. And I noticed that I got a lot of messages in Facebook messengers. Guys, I'm on Facebook just for the group. So if you message me, I'm probably not going to get back to you. My email address is in the show notes. Just email me and I'll be happy to get back to you. But I'd rather, stick a fork in my eye than use Facebook. So thanks for that, guys. And that's all I have today.
Okay. Show's over, folks. That was a fun.
Right.
No, that was awesome, man. Good stuff.
Quick and dirty.
There you go. Yeah, gotta like it. Like a lot of great links and a lot of good information about what is going on. And since you're in the middle of it, it's awesome to have that information. All right, Mike. And I know we didn't talk about this before the show, and hopefully, I know you probably listen to the show, but this is your time to have a tip if you do. So go.
Yeah. If you guys have businesses like mine, you're a small MSP, and you have room for growth, I have a tip for you. Nowadays, tax season is behind us. And if you are interested in starting a marketing campaign to grow your client base, tax preparers are now available to make some decisions for their business. So you might be thinking, how do I get a list of tax preparers to introduce myself to? Well, there's Facebook ads, and that's great. There's another resource I'm going to share with you. It's called Reference USA. That's all one word, Reference USA. And here's the thing, that's a database that may be pretty expensive, but guess what? Your local library may subscribe to that service and make it available to you in your community. So quickly, what you would do to get access to Reference USA through your library, go to their website and see if that's a service they offer. If they do, get a library card, right? And then through your library's website, at least through mine, there's a portal to Reference USA. You put in your library card number and PIN, and now you have access to it. So what? With Reference USA, it is they have a section called US Businesses Database, and you can search by, in this example, we're talking about accounting. You can go through their major industry groups and drill down till you find accounting. You can put in a radius, say miles from your home base location, and search for number. You can have the search returned by number of employees, their sales volume. You can filter out public companies if you're just interested in private businesses. You can even filter on credit rating. You want them to pay your bills after all, right? And so you do this and you get a report that you can download in an Excel format. And sure enough, it has their business name, business address, the owner, telephone number, everything you need. So if you're going to start, say, a cold calling campaign, you have all the tax preparers in your town.
Awesome. That is a great tip, and that is definitely not something I've heard before, Mike. So thanks for bringing that to the show.
That's an awesome tip. And I just got to step in right now and say Mike wins the award for the nicest office.
Absolutely. The beautiful office. Mine's just filled with toys, and it's white.
See my dogs, photo of my dogs right up there. Yeah.
Nice. For those that aren't watching on YouTube, for the audio only portion, you'll have to go back and watch the YouTube to see Mike's nice office. All right. So let's see. I've got a couple personal tips, things I've been working through. Now, as a lot of people know, we talk about things of like eating our own dog food. And what I mean by that is whatever you're going to use in your own personal office, in your own personal home, that's the same thing that you're going to service your customers with. So I do things, I try things out to see how they work on the home network first in a real world situation, i.e., I use my kids. And so there's been a couple things that, first off, I had my 13-year-old has basically has a nice gaming machine. Thing's probably it's probably 2.5 years old. Still a nice gaming machine. They built like 2.5 years ago. I have all my kids build their own computers. And he was complaining because it was really slow. And there was kind of a slow internet connection. We're going to get into that in a minute. But his computer was really slow. So I went in and he was trying to load some programs. And all of a sudden, and I did a cleanup on it, it just wasn't working right. It wouldn't uninstall things. It wouldn't install things. I kept getting a weird thing kept coming up saying something about Squirrel Updater. Now, the only Squirrel that I know of is the one done by Steve Gibson that he's working on. It is basically a form of an authenticator. And so I'm like, where is this coming from? And I looked up on the internet what it was and couldn't find anything. Tried a couple more things to clean this system up, and it was just not running right. I'm thinking, okay, maybe the hard drive's bad. So I pull the hard drive out. Nope. Hard drive passes with flying colors. And I go, you know what? I hate to tell you this, but we're going to have to redo your system. Redo the system, a night and day difference. And the reason I bring this up is because this is not the first time I've had customers where this is the prime example of something that happens with Windows 10 updates. I know I am a big proponent of Windows 10. I like Windows 10. And it is what it is. But there are things that are coming down the pike that are messing with certain machines, not all of them. And some are built, some are by OEM manufacturers, Dell, HP, etc. And so sometimes you're going to run into these things where it's not worth it to sit there and spend hours and hours trying to diagnose something when you can do a fresh install. And everything is the same in the system. Nothing has changed from 2.5 years ago, but it runs lightning fast. So this moves into my second thing, which is when I bought this house was built in 2003. So there's no Cat 5 cable, no networking cables run throughout the house. I was not crawling up in the attic. I don't do that stuff anymore. It just wasn't happening. So I said, okay, how can I get the Ethernet cable from room to room? Because I don't want to do Wi-Fi and everything. That just becomes clogged and in a mess. So I use power line adapters. A lot of people will tell you, you can't use those. They don't work. Yes, they do. You just have to know how to properly use them. A real quick lesson on home building. Now, it depends on the age of your house. But according to code in most areas, when you have a wall outlet on, let's say, 4 walls in a room, okay, all 4 of those outlets should not be on one circuit breaker. That is not the way they're supposed to work. You have one that might be on one circuit breaker, and then you've got another one that's on another circuit breaker in another room, or the same circuit breaker. Maybe the bathroom's on that same circuit breaker. So it's supposed to split the electricity up throughout the house. So when they say use these power line adapters in conjunction with the same line or going to your electrical box, one of the things you want to make sure is you have to test them out. You might have to switch it from one wall to another till you can get a good connection. I've done that in the past. So I was using D-Link AV500s. They're about 7 years old. Yeah, 7 years old. Now, the speeds my kids were getting in the one room, they were getting about 50 gigs down. Now, the service here we have is 175, 180 down. And so that's what I get in my office because I'm directly connected to everything, of course, because dad's the most important. But my son, who was in the room just behind me, he was getting about 80. So I started looking up different power line adapters. Now, again, I hadn't bought power line adapters in 7 years. These were AV500s, gigabit speed and all that kind of stuff, or pretty close to gigabit speed, but not really. So I did some research and found out that the TP links from actually, I think a couple years ago, the AV2000s, and I think they're the TLPA 9020P, and you can only buy them in a kit. I couldn't find them separately. So I had to buy 2 kits because I needed 3. What's cool about these, and I'm not a big TP Link fan, but I do have some of their lights and different things, their controllers, and that stuff works. So anyways, these power line adapters I plugged in, and my kid's speeds went to 113 in my boys' room, and in my older son's room, they went to 180. He's getting the same connection I'm getting in this office through a power line Ethernet adapter. And what's cool about these is they have 2 Ethernet ports on the bottom. So I've got 2 kids in one room. Now I just needed one power adapter that I can plug in, and I've got 2 Ethernet cables going from their computers. It works flawlessly. So here's the thing, though. There's a little button on the sides of these things. And when I was putting it in, I pressed the button by accident, not realizing that I had actually pressed the button. And what that does is you're supposed to go through and you're supposed to, within 2 minutes, press the buttons on the other power line adapters. And what that will do is that encrypts that signal going from point A to B to C all the way around between the power line adapters. So basically you can't get hacked in between. And if you do that by accident, you have to realize that sometimes you'll have 2 that are connected and you'll see a third one and you can't get it connected. Well, sometimes you have to go back and reset those. And it's real easy. Most of the time, you just need to hold the power button adapter in, or that little power button. As soon as it goes through its cycle again, you can go hit the other 2 and they'll all link up. It's real easy, but if you don't remember that, it will frustrate you and you go, why is this not working? This is why I don't change technology a lot, because it's a big pain personally. Do for customers, just not me. But anyways, those TP links are phenomenal, out of this world. And like I said, I think they were made back in like 2016. So, but they've got a newer model out, but I'm going to tell you right now, the AV2000s, that is the way to go, especially if you're going to try it for a customer. And here's the thing, especially on Amazon and things like that, you can send these things back if they don't work for you or use them in another client's. And the price was fairly good. I think it was $89 for the pair. So not a bad deal to get Ethernet from one room to the other if you don't want to have wires going from one end to the other. All right.
All right. I have a question regarding that.
Go.
Since I'm not a TP-Link fan either, is there any big player that has this kind of solution that anybody knows of?
Well, D-Link, Netgear.
I'm not sure if that's any better.
I'm with you. And so,
I'm more worried about, firmware update support, long-term, that kind of stuff. Not, the manufacturers that throw it out there and say, here it is. And
see, I don't think you're going to get that. I think you're going to get the basic encryption from point A to point B, right? And the only updates you're going to get is when you go to replace those things. So, and I understand why you're asking from your standpoint, hey, this is not just something I can throw in a HIPAA compliant office, right?
Yeah, it might be, but I'd be a little bit more at ease if I was buying it from somebody that I trusted.
And that's a good point, John. I wonder if somebody like an Arachnus or other company out there, and I didn't look, to be honest with you, if they do have something like that.
The only one that I found that made me feel a little bit better, and I'm not sure if it's better or not, but what is it? Zyxel, ZYXEL, or Zyxel?
So they were number 2.
And they have the product with the exact same model number, AV2000.
Yes. And so they were number 2. They were a fair bit slower. So I guess worst case scenario,
and I'm not sure they're any better.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about them, but I got them both in the show notes if anybody wants to check them out. But
okay, very good. And like I said, I actually had my son do a review on these and go and find some reviews. And he said TP-Link, and I said the same thing. I'm like, oh, no, we're not doing that. But then I went and looked at the reviews, and I'm like, 3 different reviewers were saying the same exact thing. I'm like, well, if 3 good, PC Mag, I think another one of the gaming magazines, and they were saying it was good. I was going to go with it. So again, for $89, for a pair, not a real huge investment or big deal there. Better than crawling through the attic. But hey, direct connection is always going to be the best, right, John?
If you can get it, yeah. But sometimes, power line's a great option. I mean, if that's all you get, especially if you need to get an access point to the other side of a building or an office, or versus running a cable outside of a home and tacking it to the side of your home, I agree.
Mike, do you use any power line adapters, or have you in the past?
No, I haven't tried the power line adapters. I've been doing wireless, but to John's point, if you don't have a solution that you can gain insight into, and you're supporting an office, and they have high expectations of uptime, and that's a challenge when you're using commercial grade, consumer grade products for that solution, and you're responsible for it. So yeah, but no, haven't dabbled with power line adapters yet.
And I would say that's one of those things where I would think in an office situation, if you didn't have the direct Ethernet connection, let's face it, laptops most of the time, unless they have docking stations, right, are going to be on wireless anyways. And a lot of people in businesses, that's what they use. They don't necessarily have something plugged in. So, and for what they're doing, it's going to be fine. But when you got kids downloading games, left and right, and playing games and streaming movies and shows, it does kind of matter. And I think that's the only reason in the residential, personally, my house, that I went with that solution. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we will get back into our main topic. Our show today is brought to you by Ninja RMM, the easy-to-use single-pane remote monitoring and management solution to help you become more efficient, more productive, and more profitable. Ninja RMM understands what you need to help your customers, which is why their RMM solution is integrated with tools you use every day. With Ninja RMM, you can have a faster fixed response time and offer preventative maintenance to your customers. Ninja RMM provides patch management, antivirus, and SMS alerting. You can be up and running quickly with minimum training time. Plus, there are no contracts, so you can focus less on stress and more on your customers. Ninja RMM also offers integrated tools that you use regularly. Remote support, TeamViewer. A lot of people are familiar with that. Backup, Cloudberry, antivirus, WebRoot. These are some of the big players in the space, and you can integrate them with your Ninja RMM. You have network visibility inside your RMM, easy to read dashboards, which I have to have, or I'm not reading them. In a powerful device search to create custom queries and export the list to keep your customers up to date on the hard work that you do for them. So they know you're just not sitting around playing Candy Crush all day long. They know that your stuff is actually working for them, and you're worth every dollar they pay you. You also have executive style reports showing important system metrics such as health score, software added or removed, hardware changes, and TeamViewer connections. Ninja RMM is offering Podnutz listeners a free 30-day trial, and when you decide to buy, a 10% discount. Take advantage of this offer. Go to ninjarmm.com/10off. All right, let's go ahead and get into our main topic. Our main topic for today is how to communicate the need to clients for firewalls and other equipment. And as Mike and I were talking before the show, basically it comes down to this. Maybe a customer does not have firewalls already in their business setting, and maybe you've inherited them, or they're a brand new business customers, and you're trying to show them what the benefit of having a firewall is. But there's always this nagging little thing called cost that everybody, except if you're taking your car to a mechanic or getting your aircraft worked on, I don't know, cost all of a sudden in the IT industry seems to be this big, bad, hairy beast that nobody wants to deal with. And here's what I say. It comes down to, I think, faking it till you make it. And the reason I say that is you got to act like you're the smartest person in the IT room at that point, giving your customers the best information you can to best protect them. But I'm gonna throw this off to John. Do you want to start and kind of run with this, and then we'll kind of get Mike's take on this, and kind of go through the conversation you guys had.
Well, maybe we want to start with just the basics of why a customer should have a firewall in the first place. And the reason I say that is, I mean, I'll throw out 5 or 6 bullet points, and then maybe Mike can toss a couple in there too. Because then at the end of the list, I think most of us know these are reasons why you need it, but these are the things you, in my opinion, can't say to a customer, because I think in 30 or 60 seconds, they're going to get that glazed over look. And, these are the technical reasons why you need a customer firewall, or why they're going to, or why they need a firewall. So things like, obviously, it protects against intruders, allows the good in, keeps the bad out. Optimization, meaning you can control internal networking components. We're talking about things like QoS or maybe DHCP66 if you use your router or UTM for that. It protects confidential information. So you can control access to certain things based on user level or MAC address or other aspects. The smart UTM will allow you to do that. It prevents attacks, something like a denial of service attack. A good UTM will prevent that as much as possible. It controls access to the LAN and endpoints and equipment inside of your network. It detects fraudulent use, meaning intrusion detection and prevention. It monitors the traffic. A good UTM will monitor the traffic that's coming into your network as well as what is leaving. A good piece of hardware, a UTM, will increase the reliability of the network and possibly even increase the speed of the network. You may need this equipment for no other reason as you're required to have one by law for compliance. But probably, I was at the ASCII conference about 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to a lot of the technical guys that are providing maybe security as a service. And I'm quickly trying to find the guy's name so I can give him a plug. But probably the main reason you needed UTM is in today's day and age, I would suggest that most of the networks we manage are what are called unknown networks. We really don't know what's happening on our network. So a good UTM will allow you to have what's called a known network. You'll know what's happening on your network. You'll know if new devices have been connected, if devices that are supposed to be connected are disconnected, if traffic is occurring that should not be occurring. You know, a lot of this stuff will be automatically blocked and you can be notified. So that you have a known or you have a network that you understand, and if something changes, you can react to that, whether that's good or bad. All right, that's the whole idea. But you know, you hear with monitoring and all that, you have to know your network and understand your network. It can't just be this wild, wild west like the internet on your local LAN. So that's my little list. Mike, did I miss anything or anything else you would throw onto that list?
Some firewalls also include gateway, antivirus. They also provide and automatic updates for them as well. John, your list was comprehensive, but again, you said it. We mention all these bullet points, and you know they're going to look at us like we have 5 heads.
Now, Mike, let me ask you this from the standpoint of you just starting to look at selling firewalls or providing the service of firewalls inside the business networks. What are some of the questions that you've already gotten, or what are some of the questions that you've thought of at this point for somebody that's just getting started?
Well, there's 2 categories I can think of right now. Those that are bound by some type of compliance or regulation. And even with those folks, again, if they don't have a firewall, they need to understand. Well, first of all, they need to understand what a firewall is. That word firewall has just been overused to explain so many things. You know, Microsoft operating system, it comes with a firewall. Your antivirus will replace that with its firewall. And, you know, of course, what we're talking about is that hardware appliance, that's that edge protection on premise for your place of business. And so sometimes it comes up, you know, folks, I have a firewall, it's on my computer already, this kind of thing. So you have those clients that may have compliance regulation and those that don't. And if it's obvious, if they, for example, receive a credit card payment on premise, then they need to understand, you know, that, you know, their firewall on their Microsoft operating system is not the right kind. It's not meeting PCI compliance with regards to protection, reporting, and separation of traffic from your payment hardware. For those that don't fall under any kind of regulation, say there's an HVAC company and they have an office, but they don't accept payments at the office. It's the technicians that are out in the field and they're running around with their devices and they take payments that way, that kind of stuff. Or maybe an insurance company and you just write them a check. So what's the benefit for these guys? And one of the things that John and I were talking about last month with regards to this kind of client, because this may be a more difficult client to embrace the idea. And so that kind of client needs to understand the benefits, and can't be. We agree we don't want to sell fear, right? We don't want to say, hey, your neighbor was hacked on the right and your neighbor was hacked on the left. You're going to be next if you don't have a firewall, this kind of thing. Or if you don't have this, bad things are certainly going to happen. However, that said, they need to understand the benefits for their business. And if you listen to some of maybe their symptoms, they might have symptomatic problems. Some of these things might be improved by a firewall. Are their VoIP calls dropping? For example, when someone, I had a conversation with a client where they said every time someone VPN the whole network the whole network came to a crawl. Things like this. Does their guest Wi-Fi take up so much bandwidth that when there's maybe a lot of customers in the business, does everything slow down? These are all things that a firewall can help with.
Now, John, from your standpoint, and I know we've talked about this before, when you're looking at, and maybe we're dealing with the one word where we call this a firewall, but some of the stuff that Mike is talking about, QoS, getting certain amount of packets to certain bandwidth to certain areas, right? And so you've got that quality of service. I just said QoS, didn't I? What an idiot. Anyways, see, they sucked me in, darn it. So anyways, but the quality of service, maybe somebody needs less bandwidth, that Wi-Fi for the guest network versus what the doctor's office needs in the back to make sure that they're getting their patient information. And plus it all needs to be separated. But instead of just calling this appliance a firewall, and I know the ones that you're using now, basically it can do so many different things. And I know you're going to talk about this, but what are some of what's kind of the elevator pitch for the services that we can provide for them, so the customer goes, they don't care all the technology of what it can do. They want to know, hey, is this going to help me be up and running smoothly every day? Something to that effect.
Well, let me add a little humor to this and say I almost fell asleep with you talking to me about all this just right now, except for your little acronym of QoS that made me laugh. And I think that's the way customers feel. All right. And when Mike and I talked about this, I suggested to him that, guys like myself and him and maybe you, at ITO Compass, that when we go out and start bombing some beers, that, after the conference, that we start thinking about this elevator pitch. Because I've spent quite a bit of time, either one, thinking about this, two, bouncing it off my wife, or three, Googling it, and usually with the results I find on Google are, should my MSP switch customers to an advanced firewall? And then the response is just what we just said now. Hey, increased security, better support, and better reporting, and all that. But, a good example of this is my orthodontists don't care about that. They just want to fix teeth. So I might even put it out there, and maybe we'll put something out there too and post it in the, maybe people could submit their 30-second elevator pitch to sell any of this type of equipment. Because I think you really have about 30 seconds to get in front of them and say, hey, I am now going to charge you $50 to $200 extra a month to put this piece of hardware in here, and here's why you need it. And I don't know if it's more in your face that, one, it'll allow us to control your network and make your network always be up, or greater increased uptime. Well, I even hate saying that, because what does greater increased uptime mean to an orthodontist? That math really is easy for guys like us to figure out, but I sometimes it's like doing a monkey doing a math problem for them. I'm not going to put braces in somebody's mouth. If you want me to run out and get my toolbox and give it a shot, we'll go for it. But there's going to be a lot of super glue and duct tape involved if I do the job. So I don't understand, besides when they say bracket and wire, I can figure out what that means. But everything else, I don't know the tools they use. I don't understand that. You know, you go somewhere and you rely on them to just take care of it for you. And that's the other big thing that I think we all need to be careful of now. That if you listen to the last Podnutz Pro with B, and he had his lawyer on talking about master service agreements, well, there's a lot more to consider with all this managed service than just your MSA. You have to be careful with your marketing and what you're promising when you put a UTM in, that you're not promising the world and then bad things happen and then things circle back and bite you in the butt, because you promised this was a high-end industry standard firewall that was going to protect us against everything, and all of a sudden we got hacked. So, you know, I'm kind of diverting here, but there's a lot to be involved in this 30-second elevator pitch about what you're promising them it's going to do and why they need it.
Well, John, if you have the safest automobile in the world and you get in an accident, does that mean that you're not going to be injured? Or you have the greatest insurance on that automobile in the world?
It's funny that you mentioned cars, because I think that's a great way to go. When I was talking to my wife about this, that's the way we went. Yeah, I said, especially, I think there's two hard pitches. One, new customers, and then one, customers that you've had forever that might, let's pick on Arachnus. Arachnus has a nice little small business firewall that's just a stateful package, SPI firewall, stateful packet inspection firewall. So it's pretty dumb. It doesn't do anything special. It just does a nice job at routing and has some basic security features in it. Well, if you've had that in a customer, things have been going great for about 3 years, and then you come to them and say, well, I want to charge you $100 a month to put this other firewall, the first thing they're going to say is, John, it's been working great. You've been taking care of us. Why do we need this? So the car analogy is where I started, maybe, is, well, we've been driving down the road and we're in our little 4-seater Yugo right now, and we're not wearing our seatbelts and anything like that. What we need to do is we need to jump into the, I don't know, Ford F-150, buckle our seatbelts, you know, roll up the windows and, you know, turn on some airbags. You know, that's the difference. Now, if you go ahead and drive into the telephone pole at 100 miles an hour, you're probably still going to die. But if we're just doing regular driving, just think how much safer we are now compared to driving around in that Yugo from 20 years ago or whatever, or something like that. You know, that's the analogy I'm starting to build at. But to sit here and tell you that I have the exact 30-second elevator pitch to sell this, you know, Mike and I spent some time on it, and I don't think we came to a definitive answer on that either.
I have another angle on that, and that's the low-hanging fruit. I want my clients to know that you know, the internet's a dangerous place, and here's the thing: when networks get probed, it's nameless, it's faceless. You're not necessarily being targeted, but it's happening. And what happens is there might be devices on your network that, just because it can be probed, those that are probing know a little something about you, and they know a little vulnerability that may be there. And it's like the VPN filter, the FBI saying, everyone reboot your routers. I had to have a laugh at that, because it's like, what was there? Linksys, Belkin, Netgear, consumer grade stuff. It's like, I used to have that kind of router. I'd reboot that every week. It would lock up. So anyway, it's like, okay, let's use that example. This, you know, if you read some of the articles and you click a little deeper, you learn how the stage 1 of this VPN filter is getting this code, you know, onto these inexpensive networking devices, right? And then there's stage 2, and it goes on and does other stuff. And, you know, eventually the Russians have built the Death Star, one Belkin router at a time, right? So the point is, don't get stage 1. If you can avoid being the low-hanging fruit, there's no way you're getting from stage 1 to stage 3. And the point, really, again, is it doesn't have to be you're in the, you know, the safest car on the road, but it's more about you know, don't be targeted. Like, you know, how many bad guys might just wiggle the handle on your front door just to find out if this, you know, if you lock your door at night. And just avoid being the low-hanging fruit. That may go a very long way in persuading that the idea is a great idea.
Well, I like that angle.
Yeah,
meaning don't want to be the drunk guy walking down the alley where you shouldn't be. The easy target.
Yeah.
Well, and I think about this so from a practical standpoint, I put in a Ring doorbell. I don't know, what was it, 2 years, a year and a half ago, something like that, John? It's been a while. And all of a sudden there's this thing that pops up and you got, Ring doorbells in the neighborhood and stuff like that. But anyways, as I'm going through my neighborhood in the summertime and walking around all the houses, I'm starting to see, because you notice them. If you've got one, you notice it right away. I'm starting to see people, consumers, right, regular consumers, putting in Ring doorbells. Why? Well, they know it stops package theft. That's one benefit, right? They know it stops just any random person from coming to the door without being videoed and having their face right on the camera, so that anything bad happens, they've got all that information, right? And so this is already happening in people's homes. People do stuff like that, or like Mike said, locking the door. Why do you have a deadbolt? Isn't it just good enough to lock the door? Yeah, except on most of these cheap handles, I'm not that strong. I can twist one off and just push it in. It's not that big a deal. But you put a deadbolt in because that gives you a second barrier that you have to break. Now, would it stop a really, really good thief? No, they're going to break in anyways. But it's a deterrent for, like you guys said, the low hanging fruit. And that makes a lot of sense. So that's definitely a good scenario to go with. John?
Yes.
They're right away. So what are some of the other things that you talked about, having a master service agreement, watching what we say in our marketing and stuff like that, because you can't promise the moon. And unfortunately, we live in a day and age of legalese, right? It's like, how do you put something down on paper, or how do you write the email in a way that is going to basically, if something bad does happen, because bad things happen, we're not selling 100+% product. We're just selling something. We're selling something better than the 50% product. Maybe we're selling a 95% product, but there's still 5% chance that something might happen, especially when it involves users, which 9 times out of 10 is most of the problem.
Well, here's a good little key they're talking about, and James in the chat brought up, is, we need to educate the customers a little bit about how things have changed. Obviously times have changed. Even versus a year ago, versus, the threats that a small business, or the attacks that a small business are under just randomly, even if they're not doing anything out of the ordinary, or have bad habits. Just what can happen driving by or leaving a window open is really bad. So I think concrete examples, we can get some of these together, and maybe I will, and I'll post them in the CRP, that you can share with clients based on small businesses and what has happened to small businesses. Even if you can do a search in your local news, like there was a church in our area that got totally hacked. So I'm starting to use that one. And they really didn't do anything. It was more of a drive-by hack. They left the door open. So they came in and did it. There's another local business that had ransomware. So if you can find these things, and maybe that you tie them back, so there's maybe a little bit of a personal connection to your business, so that just doesn't seem like, oh, this only happens to other people. If there's examples, especially if they're in the same industry, if you can find another dental office or an orthodontic office or accountants that have had bad things happen, and kind of tie that back. We're not doing that, as Mike and I agree, out of fear. Just an example that say, hey, look, these customers thought they were doing everything right. They didn't really do anything wrong, but this happened just because they weren't protected. And that we could avoid all this, or possibly avoid all this, or really increase our chances of avoiding this for X amount of dollars per month. And what do you want to do? Do you want to spend a little bit of money up front right now, or a whole lot of money later? Maybe. It's kind of like insurance.
It is. It really is. If you think about the basis of it, it is insurance. You're insured that, okay, here's the thing. You put in a piece of equipment, i.e. the firewall. You know exactly what happens. If something does happen where it gets compromised, you know that thing like the back of your hand. You can sit there and turn that situation around, get everything back up and running. Versus if it's just like you said before, the wild, wild west, you've got consumer grade routers and this and that and this switch or whatever. And all of a sudden, this becomes a big problem. Now you've got all these systems that are just bogged down. Now this becomes a humongous mess to clean up. So had you had the insurance, you'd be able to replace the car versus not having the insurance. And now you've got to go find an old beater because you don't have any money to replace the car.
Well, a little bit, it goes back into having a good piece of equipment, because if you are in trouble and bad things are happening, you should be able to see, that visibility of what's happening on your network so that you actually know something bad is happening. And again, Mike brought up the point too with maintenance, that whoever you're partnering with for that firewall, those, just like we talked about with that power line device, that it's getting updated. There's services, patches, refreshes to make sure that that device is staying as secure as possible as well, because the threats change quickly. So your hardware needs to be able to change quickly as well.
Now, this just became a thought, John, and maybe you could speak this a little more. I'm thinking of things like where you do a probe on your own network using some tools, maybe over at the Gibson Research website there. I mean, from an end user standpoint, they're really not going to know what they're looking at. But would that be something that you could basically go, look, this is this person, here's his credentials, he talks about security all the time, this is what he's provided. You can probe any network and see what's going on, see what ports are open, see what ports aren't open. Because regardless if ports are open or not, you and everybody else in the entire world is getting probed consistently all the time, whether you know it or not.
Well, I'd even take that further, because even like an Arachnus product will close all your ports from the outside. So yes, to pen test your network from the outside is very important. See if your ports are closed, or even better yet, in what's called stealth mode, so they don't even show up, so that, all of this stuff is automated, as James is pointing out in the chat as well. There's not somebody usually sitting at a keyboard anymore doing this. It's just an automated, and they're getting a report back, and they'll just come check out what's open or not in stealth later to see if they can knock on the door and get in. So the important thing is, yes, you want to pen test from the outside just to make sure that you didn't leave something open by accident, or that what's opening. Again, we're getting to that known state, or you're pen testing from the outside, maybe quarterly, just to make sure nothing changed, that you or one of your techs didn't fat finger something and open a port on accident. The other thing, which I think is even more important, is to do end mapping or pen testing from the inside, so that you can see what devices on your network might have file sharing turned on or services turned on that you don't expect them to have, or you're doing just an end mapping to see what new devices have appeared on your network since the last time. Maybe they're not supposed to be there. Or are you doing some sort of MAC address auditing, or only allowed known MAC addresses to even connect to your network? There's a lot of different ways to connect that, but you have to work both inside and outside of your network. Again, we're going back to that visibility from the inside and on the outside, that what's happening on your network.
That's good. Jeff H is also saying in the chat room, not me, you need to talk about a setup for a disaster plan and what would be a good time, or would be a good time to talk about backups. It's another thing that we've talked about over and over and over again, right? We're talking about, again, I guess in my mind,
talk about backups when the data's gone. Right?
Exactly. That's when okay, now I'm going to back everything up. Okay, but you have nothing now. All your 10 years worth of stuff is gone. So how can we get people to the point where we can say, listen, it's really, really, really important. I am bringing you this information not just to make money, because obviously I'm going to make money from doing it, but that's part of my job, to be the expert, to show you how we can best protect you, so that you don't have to go through the loss that this person did. And now they no longer have their wedding pictures from 20 some odd years ago, or whatever it is.
And keep in mind, if you're marketing and running your business as an MSP, and you're saying you're managing their computers and managing their stuff for them, the customers have the expectation, even if they're totally wrong, that you got all this covered. That if they're not going to get infected, they're not going to get penetrated, their data is backed up, that, they'll call you, and a couple clicks, you'll get it all back. It'll just be fixed. Keep in mind, that is the assumption that all your clients have. No matter what you've told to them, even if you have a great master service agreement and they have signed that, or some sort of term sheet, or however you're doing that, or even if you just run it on a handshake deal, they just assume that it's covered.
Yeah, and a lot of expectations are also regarding, hey, I got an email that was addressed to me. It mentioned something specific about me, but no, this is a phishing attempt. How did I get that? How do we make sure I never get that again? And that's, and when you talk about the combination of technology helping you and just having good instincts, it takes both. And so this all goes to the expectation of, there's no technology that's going to stand up to the test and be able to fend off the danger at every single angle.
It's one of those things where you don't want to tell your end user that they're absolutely, completely, utterly stupid when it comes to IT. You don't want to tell them that because that would offend them. And sometimes they need to be told that. But in a scenario where you're trying to help them, but you need to let them know in a way that it's almost like, and I've heard a couple other people say this before, it's almost like you got to get to a point where they're making the decision to do something. And even though you brought up the idea initially, you almost got to get them to buy in and go, yeah, I think this is a good idea. Let's do that. And so I like what you guys are saying too before about the articles and looking up local situations that happen so that you can bring those to the person's attention that you're talking to, because a lot of times, again, we don't want to do fear mongering or anything like that. But again, this is real world stuff that's going on. This is why I'm bringing it to your attention. Now, if you choose, and we have nothing to do with HIPAA, outside of that, but if you choose not to have any of this stuff, then I need you to sign here. Let me give you a crayon, and you're going to print your name in big, bold letters, and we're going to stick this on your office wall.
Well, there's also the, I like to see, have that kind of conversation. There's pushback. But if I can at least there's an understanding that this is a great idea and a requirement, get it. The money's not there now. Let's start budgeting for next year. And there's a plan.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, right, John, about an IT budget, and everybody budgets for everything, it seems. Not every company, but a lot of companies do not budget for IT. Why is that?
Well, again, I think that's expectations that we've all built as IT guys over time, that it's just always going to work. That we got it. There's no problem.
Are we our own worst enemy? Do we try to taunt our superpowers in think that we're invulnerable and we can make everything else invulnerable around us?
Well, I always look at it. Yes, we are our own worst enemy. Just look at it from the perspective of, like, if you had a general contractor and they're putting a porch on the back of your house, and they're in there and the guys are doing that and all that kind of stuff. And you just go up and say, okay, well, while you're here, can you just remove this counter for me and put in a new counter and fix this sink? What's the general contractor going to do? No.
Exactly.
But we'll quote it out and get you a change order, and you can, and you can sign here and all that kind of stuff. And a great example of the lawyer that B had on was, well, he went in and I guess the repair he needed was $8 to ride like a tire valve stem or something on his car. And he still had to sign all the same paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So, we have to be careful that, we sell somebody a firewall and we tell somebody, oh, this will protect you. You'll never get infected. You're now safe. You're all that kind of stuff. Well, something bad happens, and even if that's in your marketing material that you use industry standard best practices and all that kind of stuff, and bad things happen, a lot of that might roll downhill to you. So just be, yes, we are, because we say yes so easily.
That's true. I wonder why that is. Why are we like that?
Well, other people that show up in people's homes or people's businesses, the electrician, the plumber, we've talked about all this before. They don't play that game.
No. I'm going to tell you, I've said it before. A guy comes out in the middle of winter to look at my furnace because it's not running. Whether he does anything or not, I'm writing him a check for $1.25 easily. Here you go. Oh, you want that fixed? Oh, it's going to be like $3.50. Oh, Okay. What are you gonna? You have to have heat, right? Well, and here's the gripe that I don't understand. A business, a lot of times, even though they could do it differently, but they have made their business in a way that they rely on technology to the standpoint that in their mind, even though this might not be 100% true in every industry, they cannot run their business without their technology. Yet they want to pay the lowest bidder, which makes absolutely zero sense to me.
Well, here's a great example of people don't understand what I'm talking about when customers assume that you have it. So let's say you have a customer and they have Comcast internet and they have a nice business line and a static address. So they've kind of done it right. But the internet goes down and it's Comcast. Who do they call?
You.
That's right. And who are they upset with?
You.
Okay. Even if you tell them that, and they call and the Comcast tell them that it's a Comcast outage, who do they complain to? Yeah, it's nothing that you can control in any way. So just keep in mind that everything else you do for them or everything else they've ever heard on the news or from somebody else, they just assume you've got it covered.
Okay.
So, and that is especially true in business.
Yeah.
So,
well, in the end, you, again, from a standpoint of you have a business owner, right, that's running the business. And in your industries, John, that might be the doctor or dentist or whomever it is, right? They're the business owner. Then you've got people in the front office, back office, all that kind of stuff that are they're end users. They just want the technology to work. They don't care how it works. They don't care anything. When it doesn't work the exact way they've done it for the last 150 days, on day 151, when Google Chrome or whatever does an update to the browser, hey, it doesn't work the same. How do I do this? And they look to us and it's like, okay, yeah, we installed Google Chrome, but I don't control it.
Yeah, and
but you're
also,
the computer guy. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, I was just say that. I mean, not only the expectation that we'll fix it, and anything that goes wrong, that's our fault, and all. But the industry, I'm sure you guys have talked about this on the show. The industry has marketed everything can be free with regards to computer and computer software. In the late '80s, a personal computer would be like $4,000. Now, nothing like that. Web browsers are free. The antivirus can be free. The Microsoft Office used to be included on a brand new machine. And the marketing, our industry, not us, but the industry, has chosen to pursue in order to turn this free into something paid, affects clients. And they have this notion that, you should be able to support this free stuff as well as you could support this, what you're maybe more accustomed to supporting or your solution. It's a couple things: the expectation of we can do anything, and on a shoestring.
That's true. And here's the thing: if you go to any of these larger companies, I just had a screen repair come in, and the first question I asked, "Is it a touchscreen?" No, it wasn't. I knew it was a consumer grade laptop. And so it was a nice Core i7. I don't know exactly what they paid for it, but pulling this thing apart, it's very plasticky. Again, it's all consumer laptops are. And he sent it back. I think it was an Acer. He had sent it back to Acer because it was still within the warranty period, except this screen wasn't just working or not working. It was actually cracked in like 3 different places. Yeah, we can replace this, no problem. They want to charge him $400. I charge him $150, parts and everything, and no problem. Oh, that's it? Hey, here you go. But I look at this stuff and I go, here again, and John and I have talked about this. I've got a little Dell laptop that I bought, was refurbished. Now this machine brand new was like, I think it was like $2,000 for this machine 3 years ago. And I got it for $750 or whatever. But there are other machines you can have, nice refurbished machines that maybe are 5 years old. They're still good, have an SSD, whatever, for $400. But a lot of times when people are going out there and looking at things like laptops and stuff like that, I'm telling them, listen, you're to get a laptop that you're going to be happy with, that if you drop on the ground, you're not necessarily going to scream in pain. You're going to spend about $700-800 easily. If you're not spending $700-800, this $200 Walmart laptop is just not going to, I guarantee you, if that drops on the ground from the counter, to the wood floor, it's going to shatter into a million pieces. And then you're going to go, what do I do with this? You buy a new one. Now, if that's worth it to you however often, every time you drop it or break it or something happens, to spend another $250, $300, no, just get a quality machine that's going to last you longer.
Okay, so we really haven't answered the question here. What is the way that we're going to get our customers to buy X, whatever that is, in this case, a firewall, in 30 seconds, or our elevator pitch? So, I don't have an answer for that. I challenge anybody maybe to send me that, or if you have a good one, I'll buy you 5 beers at the ITO Compass, or, we'll figure something out. But,
well, John, I like your car analogy. That's a good one, but I guess you need to formulate that into something a little bit more concise, right? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's got to be a professional pitch that I think that's really easy. I think if you came up with something, even if you had a little flip book, maybe some pictures when you're in the office, you can, or, even if you're on the phone, you could send that, or in a presentation, has some pictures, just something that's really clear, really concise, that children can understand. And I'm not trying to be demeaning to my clients, but, when I go in, I don't really want to know what they're doing in my car. I just want my car to run and be reliable and safe. That's what I think they want. They just want the technology to work and their data to be safe and their customers to be taken care of.
So a kind of a way to look at this, we kind of look at features of technology is what we normally, because we're tech heads and this is what we do. So we talk about features. Maybe we need to bring it down to a point of let's take the example of backup. And here's what I've always said to my customers when they go, why do I need a backup? Let me ask you a question. And again, this is going to be a little bit different from residential but I'm mostly residential. So these are the questions I get. Business is going to be a little bit different. What would happen if you lost every picture of your kids, your grandparents, your wife, whatever, over the last however many years you have pictures on a computer? How would you feel if you lost all your pictures? And the answer normally is, well, I'd feel terrible. And that I'd just turn around and say, that's why you need a backup. It's real simple. I'm not selling you on a feature. I'm selling you on what it actually can do for you. So do we have anything like that when it comes to what a firewall can do? Mike, have you thought of anything since you had a conversation with John?
Well, I try to avoid the thought of a firewall or anything really being an insurance policy. I guess backup has to be considered that way. But I struggle with that because backup is the ultimate get out of jail. If everything goes wrong, at least you have your backups. But for the firewall, I think we've come up with two elevator pitches that can be that can be polished, and that is John's idea of the reliable vehicle, and then the don't be the low-hanging fruit conversation. I think we have 2 to go with so far.
So and so we might be able to take those 2 ideas, and obviously the community out there, which is always great at coming up with this stuff too. If we all put our heads together, maybe we can come up with something where we get that 30-second elevator pitch that makes it sound good and brings home the point of, here's why you need what I'm telling you need in order to have this. What's the benefit? What is the end benefit to the customer?
All right. I'll commit. I'll have something by next week.
All right, John, you're the man.
Wow. I like it.
And if anybody has any ideas, please, john@mavengroup.net. You can send one to me to podnutz@podnutz.com. That's fine. And just let us know. Hey, if you've got something, write down a little blurb and give us some ideas. Maybe we can formulate something together and I can put it in the documentation out there to help others out so we can get this information into the hands of people that actually need to sell this stuff. So, John,
Amen.
Let's take a little bit of a little side tangent for a second. And if you are, what would be your piece of advice? And I already know what it is, but I just want you to let the audience know what it would be. And actually, I'm going to ask you and then ask Mike, what would your advice be when you're going to start to sell firewalls to your customers? What's the first thing that you probably would want to do?
Well, the first thing that I would do is find a vendor that you feel is going to be a great partner, and really research a couple of things that may affect your business. One, the possible increased workload you may have from installing UTM devices, because you now have a smart device on your network, which may also block good traffic as well as bad traffic. So how are you going to manage that? Make sure that whatever device you choose meets the compliance needs of your specific customers, meaning if you have to be HIPAA compliant or FINRA compliant, and perhaps want to do VLANing and all that kind of crazy stuff, make sure your router or UTM device, and then find a company that's going to provide the type of support you need. Obviously, I'm a Calyptix partner, and one of the primary reasons I went with Calyptix is their support. They're also almost like an extension of my business, almost like I have since they are a firewall as a service, it's almost like I have an employee managing some fireworks, or at least firewalls, at least helping me manage those if I run into problems. Their support has been fantastic. That's the first thing. Okay. Otherwise, a lot of the boxes, I don't want to say they're commodity boxes, because they all have some really neat and unique features. If you were to choose SonicWall, WatchGuard, Calyptix, Sophos has firewalls, Panda has firewalls. I mean, there are a billion to choose from out there. That is the most important thing on mine, because when you approach the customer, obviously you have to find one that fits the business sizes that you deal with and the price point. That would all be in your research. But to me, just like the other things that we deal with, RMM, all that kind of stuff, make sure you find a good partner that you can deal with. Okay. That's my most important thing. Otherwise, everything else it's a UTM. It's just a UTM.
Mike, what about you?
Simplify the pricing for customers when it comes to these devices. I had just a few weeks back, I was contacted and referred to by a tax preparer that just asked, Mike, do you sell firewalls? I'm like, I don't believe this. Really? Okay, yes, I sell firewalls. And one of the things I came prepared with is a simplified pricing. I knew that in the conversation when I visited their office, I would understand the size and and power of the box they need. I'm also a Calyptix partner, and even with Calyptix, it can be a little bit it's not overwhelming, but there's a lot of information regarding, there's the price of the unit, and there's a subscription recurring costs, and then there's warranty, which would be a recurring cost. And as the partner, I choose to sell it the way I want to support it, and I don't have that as choices. I feel that's probably very overwhelming for an initial conversation. I diet it down to what I want to support, and that is going to be, there's a monthly option you have for the firewall. You could save more money if you go yearly, or 2 years, or 3 years, and that went very well. This client was very savvy and actually went on Amazon and looked up WatchGuard products, and they got over 20 pages of results on Amazon with all the different hardware, all the different warranties, all the different subscription packages, right? I'm also signed up with, I originally signed up with SonicWall to learn more about their products and stuff, and became a partner, I guess. And I just got in the mail an Excel spreadsheet with 950 rows of SonicWall offerings in this Excel, right? It's all their hardware and everything. And SonicWall, they are attractive to big businesses also. I mean, they're including their 1,000 user license pack. They run the gambit. And again, so my first thing is to simplify the pricing so that does not become an obstacle.
Okay, that's very good. And all I would say is that, again, like I talked about in the beginning of the show, use your own products that you're going to give your customer, not only for the benefit of learning the product inside and out, understanding what it is you can or cannot do with it, And again, it's one of those things where you can start at the lower levels, depending on, like John said, the size of the businesses that you're doing. Not everybody's going into 50-person, 100-person businesses. Most shops that I talk to, they're at the 20 or under is kind of the sweet spot. Even around 10 is probably the norm for a lot of the businesses that watch and listen to this show. So just understand that you can always move that up to something different down the road, but learn how it works. Learn what you're doing with it before you go into put it in the first time. That way you're already an expert. And this is what we kind of have to do. This is our own learning experience for owning our businesses. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll answer a couple emails. All right. If you would like to support this show and you appreciate what we're doing here, you can go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. We have our newest Patreon supporter, John J. Barbagalo. Thank you, John. Hope I pronounced your name fairly close, and appreciate you becoming a new patron. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters for your continued support. Remember, $1 a show will get you into the secret Facebook group. So you're looking at $4 a month to be in a group of like peers where we share ideas, ask questions, questions get answered in a safe and friendly environment. So if that sounds appealing to you, definitely go over to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. And it's real easy to sign up. All right, John, you have the first email for today. So I'm going to throw it over to you.
Well, I'm going to kind of skip the email, and I'm just going to summary describe what's going on. So I don't know how long ago, maybe 6 months ago, we did a call out we were talking about automating our RMM and automating more of our tasks. And I started talking about scripting, and I was going to dive into that. Well, a great listener, Scott Carr over at Farmhouse Networking, reached out to me, and he writes a ton of scripts. And he has offered that he would write scripts for anybody that's interested. I think he's using Autotask. I use Ninja. So no matter what platform you're using, he would be able to help you out. Scott and I trade emails all the time. He's been extremely reliable. His pricing is great to do this. So I'm going to put all of his contact information in the show notes. Shout out to Scott for 2 thumbs up, and thanks for all your help. But he's definitely willing to help other people. So feel really free to reach out to him. Let him know you heard about him on the show, and give me a plug too. And it would be a great asset for your company if you're looking for somebody to help you write some scripts and you just don't have the time to do it.
Absolutely. And just remember, I'll say this, when you're a jack of all trades, you are a master of none. So sometimes you need to go out there and use other people that are much better and more experts at doing things like writing scripts that work. Especially if you're using Autotask, you're right, John. Scripts are scripts, right? And once they get that script right, man, you can plug it in any system that you need and get it to do what you want it to do. So I think that's awesome. Very cool.
There are a few things in there with PowerShell and all that, depending on how they need to be packaged. But, Scott's the kind of guy that knows what's going on. So that has not been an issue.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Let's see. A second email. All right. It says, hello, I have a client that every time there is a Windows 10 update, he loses his sound, and I have to keep resetting the sound to get it to work. What would I do to know if there's a way to get it to stop changing the sound out every time there is an update? This is on a Dell 3263 all-in-one computer. Thank you for all your help, Robert Computer Service. And this is Robert Eiler. Thank you, Robert, for the email. And so he sent this email, and I thought I'd bring it up on the show because this, I think, is great information. And I will put a link in the show notes. John, if I forgot to put it in your show notes, but I will get it in there. It's how to disable automatic driver downloads on Windows 10.
Here's a cool thing. You can do it automatically in UVK too.
Yes. I remember you telling me that, John, and I totally forgot about that. Now, John, let me ask you a question when it comes to this, because I want to ask you this about since you are a Dell person. I know we've talked about it before, and in the business class, I use the Dell updater for doing the drivers and stuff like that comes straight through Dell versus using the Windows drivers. Would you say the same thing on a consumer grade computer? Are they similar, or
Well, I don't run into a ton of Dell consumer, but the tools are different. So on a Dell corporate laptop, whether that's Latitude, Precision, or Optiplex, you can use something that's called Dell Command Update. And there are 2 versions of that right now. The latest version is 2.4 or 3.0. If you're running Windows 10, 3.0 is what you want. That's a Windows 10 only app. 2.4 will run on anything. Both of those are pretty new. I also do not throw everything at it that comes down through Dell Command Update. I'm pretty particular in what I load. A lot of the times, if you install a lot of the Intel stuff, you'll get the Intel security software and all this other stuff too, which I don't understand what's going on with all that. But I do use it a lot for primary items like firmware updates, BIOS updates, that sort of thing, which I think are really good with that. Now, if you want to update your personal product, like your any other Dell product that's not in their corporate line, you would use something, and I'm stalling a little bit to fire up UVK or Tech Tool Store so I can get the version. There's a different product that you would use. And you can just hit the product webpage, go to drivers and downloads, and it will install this. It's called Dell Update. And it'll install that, and then it'll also show you what updates are available for that laptop. And if you want to update a Dell PowerEdge server, there is a different updater product. And it is on version 1.5.3, and you can also get that under the server download page. And it is actually command prompt based. You run the product, and it will bring up all the updates that are available for your Dell server, and you can automate the updates that way.
Awesome. I knew you would have all the info on that.
And there are similar tools on the HP product line as well.
Yes, good point. And so I started doing that a while back, even though that was one of the things I used to take off consumer systems. I actually started putting it back on because there are drivers and things that do periodically, not all the time, but they do need to be updated from time to time because things like this do happen. And I think it's even more prevalent with Windows 10 and all the updates they're doing consistently. I think.
Well, and with all the problems we have now, those dreaded BIOS updates that everybody used to fear have now become more important as well.
Yes,
because there, especially on the corporate side, there are updates for your it's called your TPM. If you're doing encryption, there's a couple big updates for HP products regarding your TPM and encryption right now. So updating your BIOS and your firmware is important as well.
Now, Mike, what do you do when it comes to drivers and running these issues?
Right. For my RMM clients, I use SolarWinds MSP, and using GP Edit, I'll disable all Windows updates. All of them. And it's my RMM that I can use to manage what gets pushed. And with SolarWinds, they let you they categorize the Windows updates into critical, important, and then down from there. And the reason I'm not familiar with the ones down from there is I only check critical and important. And typically that's going to only include security updates, patches, but it will not include any feature updates and will not include any device driver updates. It's funny with all the conversation about what to do about 1803, the Windows 10 1803 update, and with the issues folks have had, absolutely none of my clients have had an issue with the 1803 update because they don't have it. They're still running the previous feature update, and they may never get it. Well, not never. They won't get it until Microsoft determines that this feature update or a version of this 1803 contains something critical. So, so meanwhile, they're getting all their security patches and such through, the predecessor to 1803. I think it's 1709. I'm not sure. So I've had that's been my avenue with my managed clients. There is I heard this in the Mike Tech show. I tried this once. There is a GP Edit setting and I forget what it's called, but he was using it. It's in the vein of Windows updates, and it's something about prevent Windows from installing, and I forget what, some category of updates, and it was something a little bit unusual. But anyway, that is a setting to prevent device drivers that you could say set that to disable that. moving forward. I do have to say I experimented with it and had an issue with a monitor somehow getting its device manager information replaced with a generic monitor, and it was working incorrect. I guess it wasn't working expectedly, and I had to reset that Windows GP edit line item back to enabled in order to get the the monitor device driver to install again. So it wound up being shooting me in the foot a little bit, and I just determined, no, I'm not going to go down that route. I'm going to use my RMM to manage that.
Now, are you able to, because I know there's always been talk of stopping the Windows 10 updates. Now, are you saying that through SolarWinds, you can basically stop the 1803 update forever?
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I did not think that was, I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah. The trick is to make sure that Windows on what SolarWinds doesn't let you do within its interface is have the Windows client have its Windows updates disabled. You have to do that. You have to touch the device or remote in and do that manually. Or I'm sure there's some smart folks out there that are better, could do that in a smarter way. But that's what I do, especially for a new client, set them up, disable Windows updates on each machine as I touch them, right? And then within the RMM tool, I only permit what's considered critical or important Microsoft updates to push. And yeah, they don't get feature updates. They don't get the 1803.
Gotcha. Okay, that's cool.
And just to roll back to that whole driver update thing, I'm all for, in my opinion, IMO, I think driver updates are a good thing. Now, I just dealt with an issue last week where Dell laptop, it's kind of an older model, when there is no quote unquote Windows 10 driver on the Dell site, and Windows 10 1803 likes to download an ALPS driver for Dell, ALPS branded driver for Dell, which makes the mouse not work well and also prevents shutdown. So in that case, I just disabled driver updates on that particular machine. But if we roll back and we just look at the history of driver updates, just recently on, I don't know, who was it, Dell or Lenovo or somebody had some audio drivers that were actually tracking user data and all that kind of stuff. So, I kind of err on the side of caution that, driver updates are a good thing, because manufacturers will only release a driver update for two reasons, because there's no financial incentive for them to do that. It's to fix a problem or a CYA themselves. Yeah. So that's why you're getting a new driver update, because they're not going to update the drivers just to get you 10% better performance, because there's no financial incentive for them to do that.
That's a good point. Okay.
So, in my opinion, I'll pick on Mike Tech Show too. He seems to have problems with drivers all the time that he complains about. Yes, obviously in his case, either just stop the driver updates on that machine. You can do it through GPO, you can do it through a PowerShell script, or you can just disable it in UVK and your problems will go away that way. So,
well, and I say this to Mike Smith with all love and kindness in my heart, but just change the video card, would you?
Well, come on. I just listened to his latest show, and that's what he's going to do. He says, I'm going to an AMD, baby. So.
I wouldn't even go. I've been using NVIDIA. It's just he's like almost 4 generations old on his video card. So,
I'm not knowledgeable enough to even know that. So,
love you, Mike.
On board video, baby. On board video.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this is come up from, and I'm going to throw this out here. I don't normally endorse these, but in this particular case, this sounded like something that maybe some people might want to get involved with. It says, hi, I've been a follower of your podcast for a long time now. I own my own computer repair business called Clear Lake Computer Service. I work full-time as a technology coordinator, network administrator, and teacher in a small school district. Might sound crazy, but I also DJ on the side called Clear Lake Entertainment. Actually, that's not as crazy as you sound. I couldn't tell you how many tech guys I know that actually DJ. So it seems like the two go together for some reason. I started a closed Facebook group called Tech Support for Computer Technicians. Goes as a place for computer technicians to get help when they need help, not end users. Would anyone at the podcast network be interested in joining the group, giving it a shout out, and even some of you being an admin? I'm not doing this for financial gain, just a place where I can ask a fellow computer tech a question. And you can look it up. I'll have the link in the show notes, Tech Support for Tech. So anyways, there's lots of groups out there. A lot of us know of the different groups that we're involved with. Obviously there are many, many groups, and I'm a part of a few, but the more I become a part of a lot, it kind of seems like they just, your feed just gets so full that you miss a lot of stuff unless you're like diving into that all the time. So, but anyways, I wanted to throw that out there because obviously always help somebody out that, does this, for their business, and has found good things in other Facebook groups. I think he had mentioned too, he's part of quite a few DJ groups on Facebook and really enjoys the interaction there. So he's looking for kind of the same thing. All right. So with that, I think that's it. I think that's all we have today. John, anything else you can think of?
That was easy. No. Mike made it easy. I didn't have to do it.
Yeah. Thanks for the topic, Mike. And thanks for coming on and sharing. And I would love to see this more often. We've tried to take this show. We've tried to do a call-in show, and it became, people don't want to call in and stuff. But this is a perfect scenario where Mike had a question. Him and John were interacting, and Mike was able to come on the show and talk about the things that he's working on in his business. And we're able to collaborate and put some ideas together. Again, this is why we do what we do. I don't really do this because I have nothing better to do with my life.
I think you do it for the money.
Yeah, I do it. I do it for every dime possible. But anyways, so with that being said, it's nice to have the community to be able to come together and have new people come on the show and talk about things that they're working through in their business. That's the stuff I like to see. John, would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people get tired of hearing us talk, I'm sure. So
absolutely.
It's good to have like Mike here.
Right. John hates when I just go off on a tangent.
Oh, okay.
And for your Patreon subscribers, I like to think that between the three of us, we provided $1 worth of value today.
Appreciate that. Yes, I think we provided way more than $1, but yes. Absolutely.
Well, you each did 33 cents. I did 34 cents.
Okay.
So,
That's real math. That's math on the air. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
No, I used my computer.
Okay. All right, Mike, if you want to give one parting thought and let people know where they can find you at, if they want to ask you a question or bump you in a Facebook group or something or whatever.
Sure. My website's the best way. I am a Patreon subscriber, and I do like to participate in the secret Facebook group. You'll see me there, but yeah, my website is clockwork-networks.com, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Awesome, man. And if you guys want to hear more about Mike's story, go back and listen to Podnutz Daily 490, where I interviewed him about his business and what he's doing there. So you get some more of that information there, get to know Mike a little bit better. All right, John, if you could let people know where they could find you. I think you already did several times, but go ahead.
Let me use my last 30 seconds of speaking here just to tell everybody how this works. So Mike was looking at firewall vendors. He asked me about Calyptix. He got on board with Calyptix. I sent him some information, my wait list that I use in my box. That worked out great for him. Little and behold, like 2 days later, Mike sends me an email and says, hey, did you know about this? He sent me a wait list rule that really helped me out. So, the CRP group and all that for $1 a month, and just all of us getting to know each other a little bit and be able to share these things, that's huge. So high five to you, Mike, for sharing that back to me. And I'm sure we'll be doing that a lot more as our Calyptix journey continues. John at mavengroup.net. If you need me, I'm happy to help. If I got the time, I'm more than willing to poke you back and go so on and so forth. So thank you.
Awesome, John. Thanks again for coming on and sharing the way big amount of information that you
I'll try not to do so verbose next week. I'm going to come with one next week, one really good one, and then I'm done. Oh, just my homework. I'm coming with my homework and I'm done.
There you go.
Okay.
It's always good, man. You always bring the good. So definitely appreciate that. All right. Come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. You can send an email to podnutz@podnutz.com, or you can leave a voicemail at 734-335-1000, and we will definitely play that on the air right next to our lovely voices. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.